If you want to understand the first few weeks of the second Trump administration.
Does this guy look like Wicked Supreme and Counterpoints, like got smashed together in like a collider into one person? Am I crazy?
If you want to understand the first few weeks of the second Trump administration, go back and listen to what Steve Bannon told PBS's Frontline in 2019.
The opposition party is the media. And the media can only, because they're dumb and they're lazy, they can only focus on one thing at a time. All we have to do is flood the zone. Every day we hit them with 3 things. They'll bite on one and we'll get all of our stuff done. Bang, bang, bang. These guys will never be able to recover, but we gotta start with muzzle velocity. So it's gotta start, it's gotta hammer, it's gotta...
Somebody said, no one is saying lower taxes. They just need to see the government use them responsibly. I'm not even saying they aren't, but they need to be shown that they are and need arguments why it should be raised, not stuff about any more money. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, like, that was one of my big feelings for California, right? Like, I pay so much less in taxes in Florida than I paid in California, and I don't know what for. I couldn't tell you. I think I even asked it on stream, like, where the f does all my tax money go in California? I actually don't know. I have no fucking idea. So I do agree with that. Like, we should have a better vision of, like, where the f is our money even going? Because it seems like we're really bad at communicating that in the United States, but...
Muzzle velocity.
Muzzle velocity. Bannon's insight there is real. Focus is a fundamental substance of democracy. It is particularly the substance of opposition. People largely learn of what the government is doing through the media. So if you overwhelm the media...
A record-setting number of executive orders.
Everybody pardons. Violence, non-violence.
Including assaulting police officers.
Birthright citizenship.
We live in unprecedented times right now.
If you keep it moving from one thing to the next...
So far, so good.
Is this legal?
Wait, real quick. I'm so sorry. Wait. I'm not gonna be able to find it. I saw this stupid, the dumbest meme video ever of what does RFK sound like? If anybody knows what I'm talking about, link it. Sorry. Okay. Damn it.
If you give it too many places it needs to look.
You've never been deported before?
You got to fill.
All at once.
All federal grants and loans will be halted.
Look, there is a purge happening.
Frankly, unprecedented in its nature.
Part of this, though, is to the blame of I'll say the establishment Democrats as well, the establishment Dems and the progressives, of course. But like even the establishment Dems, we have to stop doing this thing where we demonize the bureaucrats and demonize like politicians and it's just cringe and overly simplistic and the donors and everything else. Like, bro, like look at your system. You have arguably still, maybe, no offense here, I was like one of the best countries on the planet, if not the best country on the planet. Obviously, these people are doing something right. If you think they're doing something wrong, then find it, fix it, and then move on. Like, iterate on the current formula, make it better. Or if you want to knock some stuff down, make a good argument for a new thing and then make it better and go on. But stop like shitting on every single part of the government and then being surprised and be like, oh, what the fuck? These mega fascists are showing what they want to destroy the entire government. Yeah, you've been shitting on. Like, how can the left be surprised when you've been saying like, well, corporate donors and lobbyists have bought out the whole fucking government? Yeah, and if you say that for long enough, then nobody's going to be, who's the government's defender, you know? Like, yeah. Destiny, top 1% of earners paid 40% of income taxes. Gotcha.
Guantanamo.
DEI.
The Gulf of America.
No coherent opposition can really emerge. It is hard to even think coherently. Donald Trump's first 2 weeks in the White House have followed Bannon's strategy like a script. The flood is a point. The overwhelm is a point. The message wasn't in any one executive order or announcement. It was in the cumulative effect of all of them.
True. Okay, sorry.
The sense that this is Trump's country now. It is his government now. It follows his will. It does what he wants. That he is limitless. If he says that birthright citizenship is over, then it's over. Or so he wants you to think. In Trump's first term, people said, don't normalize him. In a second, though, the task, I think, is a little bit clearer. Don't believe him. Because Trump knows the power of marketing, the power of belief. If you make people believe something is true, you make it likelier that it becomes true. He clawed his way back to great wealth by playing a fearsome billionaire on TV. He remade himself as a winner after the 2020 election by refusing to admit he had ever lost. The American presidency is a limited office, but Trump has never wanted to be president. What he's always wanted to be is king. And his plan this time is to first play king on TV. If we believe he is already king, if we believe he already has all that power, we will be likelier to let him govern as a king. We will then give him that power. Don't believe him. Trump has real powers, but they are the powers of the presidency, the powers Joe Biden had, the powers Barack Obama had. The pardon power is vast and unrestricted, and so he could indeed pardon the January 6th rioters. Federal security protection is under the discretion of the executive branch. And so yes, Trump could remove protection from Anthony Fauci and Mike Pompeo and John Bolton and Mark Milley, and even Brian Hook, this largely unknown former State Department official who's under threat from Iran, who even donated time to Trump's transition team.
I would be very happy to put President Trump's record in the Middle East against any other president.
All of this, it was an act of astonishing cruelty and callousness. This from a man who nearly died by an assassin's bullet months ago. As much as anything ever has been, this, to me, this was an X-ray of the smallness of Trump's soul. But it was an act that was within his official power. But the president cannot rewrite the Constitution. Within days, his birthright citizenship order was frozen by a judge, by a Reagan appointee, who told Trump's lawyers, "I have difficulty understanding how a member of the bar would state unequivocally that this is a constitutional order."
What is your main gripe with the unitary executive theory? I feel like the president should have power over the executive branch. I would have to read a larger paper on it, or any paper, a full paper on it. I just don't understand how you can believe in it. My understanding of the unitary executive theory is that every single office that exists in Congress is more or less an extension of the president's power, and that every time an FBI agent does something, he does so in place of the president, because the president himself can't be in a million places at once. But this seems to be at ends with the constitutional authority that Congress has to create and destroy offices of the executive branch. So if Congress is vested with the ability to create and remove departments in the executive branch, then how can we believe that the president himself is the one with exactly all of the power to determine how to wield the executive branch? I don't know. It seems to be at ends with the Constitution to me.
It just boggles my mind. Then, a judge froze Trump's spending freeze. He froze it even before it went into full effect. And shortly thereafter, the Trump administration rescinded the entire order, in part to avoid a court case that it seemed pretty clear they would lose. What Bannon wanted, what the Trump administration wants, is to keep everything moving fast.
Muzzle velocity.
If you're always consumed by the next outrage, you can't look closely at the last one. Then the impression of Trump's power remains, and the fact that he keeps stepping on rakes is missed. The projection of strength.
Did I start playing a thing? I'm so sorry. Fuck, my bad. I thought this was a thing in the background. My bad.
What Bannon wanted, what the Trump administration wants, is to keep everything moving fast.
Muzzle velocity.
If you're always consumed by the next outrage, you can't look closely at the last one. Then the impression of Trump's power remains, and the fact that he keeps stepping on rakes is missed. The projection of strength obscures the reality of weakness. Don't believe him. You can see this a few ways. Is Trump playing a part? Is he making a bet, or is he triggering a crisis? Those, I think, are the options, and I'm not certain that even he knows the answer. Trump has always been an improviser. But if you take it as a bet, a calculation, then here is a bet he's making. Maybe this Supreme Court, stocked with his appointees, gives him powers no peacetime president has ever possessed. Perhaps.
Why do you think Democrats didn't push to dismantle the power of the executive branch when they had the chance? It seems to me the presidency is too powerful, and now Trump is president. In the future, it could easily be worse. It could be. I mean, like, Democrats are already cucked out a bit when it comes to exercising like power as abusively as Republicans do. Like, is it really on the onus on Democrats to give back all the pieces of power every single time they're in when they are like that? Bro, that's too much. It can't be. You're talking about a game where you have two inters on your team. It's a League of Legends game with two inters, and you're trying to hyper-analyze mid and bot to figure out how they could have won with their top and jungle feeding all game. Like, it has to change. It's unwinnable right now. It has to change.
All this becomes legal now that he has asserted its legality. It's not impossible to imagine that bet paying off for him. So what if the bet fails? What if Trump's arrogations of power are soundly rejected by the courts? Then comes a question of constitutional crisis. Does he just ignore the court's ruling? To do that would be to attempt a kind of coup. I wonder if they have the stomach for that. The withdrawal of the OMB order to me suggests they don't, because bravado aside, Trump's political capital is thin. Gallup has Trump's approval rating at 47%. That is about 10 points beneath Joe Biden in January of 2021. Both in his first and his second terms, he entered office with approval ratings below that of any other president in the moment.
But unironically, isn't that what every high elo player will tell you to do? Focus on what you can control. Maybe I've lost sight of the analogy. Okay, let me help you with the analogy. Imagine if instead of having a game where you've got a teammate inting, imagine you have the exact same game, but that game is like 250 years long and you can't just leave and go to the next one. That's the issue.
Modern era. And so I thought these defenses of Trump's firings were telling.
It is the belief of this White House.
And actually, it wouldn't surprise me, any high elo player coaching a low elo player, unless league has changed significantly, would probably tell you that if you're grinding or if you're trying to get higher, if you've got an intern on your team, you forfeit 15, you can, or 20, forfeit 20 as soon as possible. Get out of that game. Don't waste your time destroying your mind and destroying your effort and wasting precious minutes in a game that can't be won. Just go to the next.
These defenses of Trump's firings were telling.
It is the belief of this White House and the White House counsel's office that the president was within his executive authority to do that.
The law says he's supposed to give you 30 days notice. He
Yeah.
didn't do that. Do you think he violated the law?
Well, technically, yeah.
Do you believe that it's legal?
By definition.
How real is the fear of Democratic backsliding? Vance doesn't seem as insane as Trump. I don't know what that means. How real is the fear? That's like asking, like, how real is the fear that, like, we'll survive to 2025? We already have. What do you mean? We've already had Democratic backsliding. This is already, it's already happened. So, the question is, how far will we backslide?
It's his administration. They work for him.
Technically, yeah.
God, it's bullshit how cool this guy looks with an eye patch.
Believe that it's legal?
By definition, it's his administration. They work for him at the pleasure of the president. And if it's illegal, it should be legal.
So then ask yourself, why isn't Trump trying to make it legal? There is a reason Trump is doing all this through executive orders rather than submitting these same directives as legislation to pass through Congress. A more powerful executive could convince Congress to eliminate the spending he opposes, or to reform the civil service to give him the powers of hiring and firing that he seeks. And there's a good reason to do that. To write these changes into legislation would make them both more durable and would allow him to argue their merits in a more strategic way. He would be reforming the entire system. But Republicans at the moment, they have only a 3-seat edge in the House, smallest majority since the Great Depression. They have a 53-seat majority in the Senate. Trump is obviously doing nothing to reach out to Democrats. If Trump tried to pass this agenda as legislation, it would fail. And that would make Trump look weak. And Trump doesn't want to look weak. He remembers John McCain humiliating him in his first term by casting the deciding vote against Obamacare repeal. Congress is a place where you can lose. That is a tension at the heart of Trump's whole strategy.
Today, I will sign a series of historic executive orders.
Trump is acting like a king because he's too weak to govern like a president.
With these actions, we will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense.
Am I wrong, or is this guy asking, why doesn't he try to make it legal, missing the whole immunity point? No, he's just pointing out that, like, there's a reason why Trump is trying to do things via executive order and not through legislation in Congress. It's because he can't pass legislation, because he's one guy. He can't do it. He doesn't have the support anywhere. Remember, this was one of the most, it's funny, this is one of the few things that Lichtman got correct. Well, I shouldn't say one of the few things. Lichtman probably got a lot of political analysis correct. People got really mad at him when he said this, because Lichtman didn't give, he didn't give Trump the charisma key. And people are like, well, what do you mean? Trump is a charismatic president, if anything, no? No, he's not. Most people don't like Trump, and his approval ratings are historically low. It just doesn't feel that way because we're so divided. His approval ratings among Republicans is incredibly high. It's almost always like plus 90% or 90% plus. It's almost always higher than 90%. I think at its lowest with conservatives, like 84%, like at its lowest, I think, like after Gen 6 or something. So, but people think Trump is like charismatic and popular. He's not. This guy showed the chart earlier. Trump is not very popular.
This flurry of activity, it's meant to suggest the existence of a plan. But the closer you look, even at this first 2 weeks, the less true it seems.
We should watch this video from the silly series. We've already watched it.
They are scrambling and flailing already. They are leaking against each other in the press already. We learned that the OMB directive was drafted reportedly without the input or oversight of key Trump officials.
Wait. It needs to be pushed harder that Trump wants to be a dictator because he is weak. A strong leader doesn't need to be a dictator because they can inspire others to follow them and make good decisions. It's not worth arguing that, because Republicans want a dictator, and they won't say it's because they'll say, okay, fine, he's weak compared to what? The entire deep state? Of course. Like, it's a loser argument. You missed Short Fighter Talker's message. What did he say? Destiny, could he not pass legislation? The Republicans control both chambers and MAGA's primarying out everyone. No, because you need more than just a simple majority in the House and Senate to pass big bills, no? I should look at what majorities you need. I'm pretty sure you need more than just a simple majority.
It didn't was drafted, leaking against each other in the press already. We learned that the OMB directive was drafted reportedly without the input or oversight of key Trump officials. It didn't go through.
This is what I was saying with it. Like, even if you support Trump's actions here, it's a failure in leadership to not bring in anybody else from leadership to get this, like, implemented.
Trump officials. It didn't go through the proper approval process, an administration official told the Washington Post. For that to be the process and product of such a sweeping signature initiative in the second week of a president's second term, it's embarrassing. But it's not just a spending freeze. The Trump administration is waging an immediate war on the bureaucracy, trying to replace the deep state they believe hampered them in the first term.
How disillusioned are you with the concept of American democracy? It seems that a lot of Americans are retarded and highly susceptible to lies as to allow for the weakening of democracy. It's not just Americans, though, it's everybody. We just have to figure out a way to deal with the media atmosphere. We have to figure out a way to deal with the media atmosphere. Right now, we just don't know how. Hopefully we figure it out before everything comes crashing down.
Immediate war on the bureaucracy, trying to replace the deep state they believe hampered them in the first term. And a big part of this project...
Sorry. As a Spaniard, the whole concept of the deep state is very alien to our politics, so I never really knew what it's supposed to mean. Is it some kind of unfalsifiable idea? The deep state is basically just Donald Trump, as the president, wants to do everything to fix our country, and anytime he can't do it, there's like shady, weird bureaucrats in government that are trying to sabotage him at every step. Yes, the deep state is fundamentally unfalsifiable. Yeah. And there's no evidence for any type of huge coordinated effort whatsoever. It's an unfalsifiable conspiracy theory.
Trying to replace the deep state they believe hampered them in the first term. And a big part of this project seems to have been outsourced to Elon Musk, who's bringing the tactics he used at Twitter to the federal government.
We're about 20% of the original size.
So 80% left?
Yes.
He has longtime aides now at the Office of Personnel Management, and the email that got sent out to nearly all federal employees even reused the subject line of the email he sent out to Twitter employees after the acquisition. A fork in the road. It's a kind of bragging. Elon wants he wants everybody to know it was him.
The scary thing is that, and this is the issue because remember, this is the playbook for Republicans. The playbook is, it used to be, you guys are doing this horrible thing. And they go, well, no, we're not. And they go, we're going to stop you from doing this horrible thing. It's like, okay, well, we're not. And then they're in government, and then we're like, hold on, you're about to do a horrible thing. And they're like, no, we're not. And then they start doing the horrible thing. We're like, you're doing the horrible thing. And they're like, well, no, we're not really. And it's like, now there's proof that you're doing the horrible thing. Like, well, you guys already did it, so we can too. So it's like a lose-lose. There's like no way to actually do anything about it. Because the reality is now we are getting to a deep state point, but it's with Elon Musk. But the only difference is like their deep state, there was no evidence of it at all. It was just all like posting on 4chan and QAnon and shit. And our evidence of the deep state is literally Elon Musk and Doge right now, a fake department of the government that is going into other parts of the federal government and pulling the plug on organizations and then bragging about it publicly like that. So
the email offered millions of civil servants a backdoor buyout. Agree to resign, and in theory, at least, you can collect your paycheck and benefits until the end of September without doing any work. The Washington Post reported that the email blindsided many in the Trump administration who would normally have consulted on a notice like that. It blindsided many of the people who are going to have to run these agencies that are now going to be dotted by resignations. I suspect Musk...
Why do you call it a fake? Because Doge is not like a real department authorized and created by Congress. It's just like a little meme department created within the office of the White House. It shouldn't have the authority to go into other departments and pull funding or pull the plug on them, because departments that are created by Congress have to be deleted by Congress. One day I'll actually fucking learn the Constitution. Wait, Article 2 is the president? Which one is Congress? Is it Article 1? Article 4? Article 1. Congress, President, Judicial. Judicial is 3, right? Fuck. Which clause is about creating offices? I should memorize these. Is it this clause? To make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers, and all other powers vested by the Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof. I'm trying to think of... I don't know if that's the strong one of... Hold on. Constitutional authorization, Congress to create departments. Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2. Wait. Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2. The President shall have the power, by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur, and he shall nominate, and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, judges, the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States, whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for. Oh, okay, sorry, it's this here. And all other officers of the United States. So your officers are essentially your cabinet, right? These are the heads of your departments, whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for, so they haven't been declared by the Constitution yet, and which shall be established by law, meaning the Congress. The Congress may, by law, vest the appointment of such inferior officers, so like your people underneath the top-level officers, as they think proper, in the President alone, in the courts of law, or in the heads of departments. So this is why it can be illegal for, like, the President, I don't believe, would be allowed to fire the Deputy Attorney General. The Attorney General would have to fire the Deputy Attorney General, but the President could fire the Attorney General, if that makes sense, I think. Unless Congress, when they created the Department of Justice, or when Congress creates something, they can specify, well, the President can do that or can't do that. This is also why I don't know how you can believe in the unitary executive theory, and I don't know how you get by, like, these clauses in the Constitution. USDS is now Doge. It is official, though. So I don't know what the USDS's prior roles were, but the President cannot have, cannot use. This is still part of the office of the White House. The executive office of the President that's synonymous with the office of the White House, right? I think. Or is the office of the White House different? Is the head of the executive office of the President the chief of staff? Or is the office of the White House a separate office besides the executive office of the... Okay, this is the White House office, sorry. Okay, so the formal name is the executive office, not just the White House office, I think. Regardless, people are saying, oh, well, there was a thing and it got renamed and removed. You can't, you can't have people that are just going in and dismantling your departments that are authorized by Congress. You can't do that. The President doesn't have the authority to. Congress is the one that created those departments by law. They're established by law. You can't dismantle those without Congress undoing them. Destiny, this is just for appointment. You may remove an officer at any time. The unitary executive theory doesn't believe. I don't think that he can appoint anyone at any time. Well, no, but you can remove an officer at any time, but you can't remove anybody below them. Like, the President of the United States is not legally allowed to fire people in the Department of Justice, I don't believe. He can only fire the Attorney General, I believe. Is my understanding, at least. Biggest political streamer on Twitch on USAID. Oh boy. What law substantiates the Department of Education? I imagine Congress probably had to pass a big law to create it, right? Department of Education. Having been created after the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare was split into the Department of Education and the Department of Health and Human Services by the Department of Education Organization Act. So this was an act by Congress that split this, and then that's where the Department of Education comes from. But I believe the vast majority, I'm trying to think, somebody can tell me this. I don't know if any departments are explicitly created in the Constitution. For some reason, I thought there were like 3 departments that are explicitly created in the Constitution, and then the rest are made by Congress. But I could be wrong. Maybe there's not any specific department here. Why wouldn't he be able to fire inferior officers? Are they using his powers as executive, even if they are inferior officers, the power that belongs to the president by Constitution? But that power is granted to the president by the Congress. The Congress says, we want you to have a Department of Education. You can hire the top dude, and then here's the roles for the rest of the people. But like the president doesn't have the authority to go in to an office created and authorized by Congress to do things inside the department that Congress doesn't authorize him to do. What's the dumbed down solution to gun crime? Because as an 18-year-old in a very liberal state, it's really easy for me to get an illegal one. I just don't think gun crime is as big a deal as people say it is. It's not one of our huge problems right now. Okay, so the Constitution didn't explicitly create any departments. It just authorizes Congress to. Okay. Unironically, the Chevron case going against Trump here, no? The overturning of Chevron is bad for Trump, yes. One of the only things that I've read about how the Supreme Court could protect the United States from Donald Trump is the fact that while the Supreme Court might be eager to give more power to Donald Trump, the Supreme Court will never, this court will never give up its own power. The overturning of Chevron was a huge power grab back to the Supreme Court. And arguably, even immunity for the President of the United States is a big power grab for the Supreme Court. Because anybody that wants to take the President of the United States to court for some criminal thing, that means that every single thing will have to pass through the Supreme Court for evaluation first. So that's the one thing I've heard, that like the Supreme Court will grab it, will never give up power. So this court, at least. Does that matter if Trump just doesn't enforce it? Well, no, if Trump doesn't enforce it, then we're just kind of shit out of luck. The first 3 executive departments created by Congress were the Department of State, the Department of Treasury, and the Department of War. The first Congress established these departments in 1789. Gotcha. What was the issue with Trump firing Comey? Trump fired Comey because he was trying to stop the investigation into him and his cronies over the colluding with Russian sources on leaking shit about Hillary and other things. Don't you think there's a bunch of bloat built up in the government that slows down the execution of important policies? Yes, but like you have to, like, when you say that, this is the equivalent of Elon Musk going on Twitter saying, oh, Twitter is slow, we need a rewrite of the full stack. What the fuck do you mean we need a rewrite of the full stack? What's slow? What do you want to change? Let's talk. It's the same thing when you go to government. If you think there are some parts that are slow or inefficient, or you want to, sure, fine, that's fine. We can change shit. You know what the problem is. But you can't just say, like, it's all bloated and slow, let's redo everything. That doesn't make any sense. Can't Trump tell the head of the office to fire the people within the department, and if they refuse, just fire and replace? I'm not sure. I don't think he can, but I don't actually know the answer to that. I know as a norm he's not supposed to, but... Okay, let's finish this.
Run these agencies that are now going to be dotted by resignations. I suspect Musk thinks of the federal workforce as this huge mass of woke and largely useless ideologues. For most federal workers, they have very little to do with politics. About 16% of them work in healthcare. These are nurses and doctors who work for the Veterans Affairs Department. How many of them does Musk want to lose? How many primary care doctors treating veterans is he hoping take a buyout? Twitter worked terribly after Musk's takeover. It had these frequent outages and bugs, but its outages are not a national scandal. When VA healthcare degrades, it is a national scandal.
Most of what we're talking about here is a group text service at scale. Like, how many people are really needed for that, you know?
What Trump wants you to see in all this activity is command. What is really in all this activity is chaos. They have convinced themselves that speed and force is a strategy unto itself, that it is, in a sense, a replacement for an actual strategy, for thinking and talking things through, for consultation, for planning things out. Don't believe them. I had a conversation a couple months ago with someone who knows how the federal government works about as well as anyone alive. And I asked him what would worry him most if he saw Trump doing it. And what he said was that he would worry most if Trump went slowly. If he began his term by doing things that made him more popular, that made his opposition weaker and more confused. If he worked by stealth, if he tried to build strength for the midterms while slowly expanding his powers.
Dude, if Trump was a more effective leader, but I never know. I mean, he won a second election, so who are we to say? Maybe that's the wrong choice. Because I do feel like Trump, like, imagine how mind-fucked. Like, I fully 1 billion% believe this. Here's something that I fully believe. I think that if Donald Trump said on day one, we're going to have a 15 an hour minimum wage, I actually think the country would have it like in 2 months. I think it would be done. If Trump said, I'm trying to think of like what are the like easily popular things Trump could do that like, regardless if they're good or bad for the economy, I don't think 15 hour federal minimum wage is good, but like I think that there are things that Trump could do that would, I feel like, make him more popular with, oh, he could legalize weed. Trump could say, we should just legalize weed. Who the fuck is against us at that point? Like, these are things that Trump could do that I feel like would make him popular with almost Medicare for all. That's too big of a step. I think that's too much paperwork. That's too complicated. I'm just thinking like really simple, easy things that Trump could do. And
chipping away at the state.
But none of those give him more power. Well, no, it would give him more power because one of the things that Ezra is bringing up here, that's a good point, is Trump doesn't actually have much political power, like structurally or institutionally. It's all in the people and his like voting base. Like Trump is not powerful or popular for Congress. This is what I was talking about before. That's why he always overperforms his ticket. It's always why the people underneath him on the with the R next to their names aren't doing as well as Trump is, because it doesn't translate to other people in the government. It's only Trump. And he could do things that I feel would shore up power for his people. That's why he lost the elections in 2022 didn't go the way they wanted. So many special elections were lost. Like,
if he worked by stealth, if he tried to build strength for the midterms while slowly expanding his powers.
Maybe I'm wrong, but isn't deporting illegal people pretty popular amongst the public nowadays, even if it's bad for the country? I think there's ways that he could do that deportation thing that would like make everybody, like it would be less unpopular. Like a thing that you'd have a lot of trouble with is imagine Donald Trump says, I'm signing an executive order today that says that we are deporting every single illegal immigrant in every state and federal prison that has a felony. Like, that would be really hard for Democrats to fight against. You almost have to give them that one. So like 15 an hour minimum wage, weed legalization, deporting all illegals with, deporting every single illegal immigrant with a felony in a current state or federal prison. Like these are like, I feel like these are things where it's like, oof, like most people are going to like that. Now Congress is like, okay, my leader's finally doing some shit that I can go back to my constituents with. That isn't some unhinged crazy shit that I've got to carry water for. Like, I don't know.
And more confused. Trump went slowly. If he began his term by doing things that made him more popular, that made his opposition weaker and more confused. If he worked by stealth, if he tried to build strength for the midterms while slowly expanding his powers and chipping away at the state in the places where it was weakest, where people couldn't really see him doing it. But Trump didn't do any of that. Instead,
muzzle velocity.
And so the opposition to Trump, which seemed so listless and absent after the election, now it's beginning to rouse itself. There's a subreddit for federal employees where one of the top posts reads, "This non-buyout really seems to have backfired. I'll be honest, before that email went out, I was looking for any way to get out of this fresh hell. But now I'm fired up to make these goons as frustrated as possible." As I write this, it's been upvoted more than 39,000 times, and civil servant after civil servant is echoing the initial sentiment. In Iowa this week, Democrats flipped a state Senate seat in a district that Trump had won easily in 2024. The attempted spending freeze gave Democrats their voice back as they zeroed in on the popular programs Trump had imperiled. Trump isn't building support here, he's losing it. Trump isn't fracturing his opposition, he's finally uniting it. This is the weakness of the strategy that Bannon proposed and that Trump is following.
Hello, have you seen videos from New York of people going around streets without any homeless people on the streets? They are all gone and scared. Okay, I'm sorry, and I know this triggers people on the East Coast, but don't when you see videos on the East Coast, this is what you got to understand in the USA, okay? East Coast people don't know what homeless people are. They don't know what it means to have homeless people. So when you're seeing videos in New York, it's like, oh my God, like there's no homeless people. There are no homeless people in New York, okay? They think there are because they've seen a couple on the subway or whatever. But the reason is they've never been to Seattle, Portland, LA, or San Francisco. They don't know what homeless people look like, okay? I have been to New York so many times and I'm like, what the fuck? Where the fuck are the homeless people? I see them in movies all the time. I see people talk about them all the time. New York City does not have homeless people. I think I saw one homeless guy on a subway once. I think he was homeless or he was a hipster. I couldn't tell. Didn't catch anybody setting anybody on fire, unfortunately. Meanwhile, I still remember the first time Melina was in LA and we were driving and she was like, wait a second. And I'm like, what's up? And she's like, I thought that there was like a famous underpass with tents underneath it. I didn't realize it was all the underpasses. It's all the underpasses. It's not even, it's on a totally different scale. It's not even close, okay? Like, homelessness in New York City is like ARAMs, and homelessness on the West Coast is like ESCA, you know, professional level, Olympic level. It's not even close.
It is a strategy that forces you into overreach. To keep the zone flooded, you have to keep acting. You have to keep moving. You have to keep creating new cycles of outrage or fear to keep the media and the opposition overwhelmed. But then you overwhelm yourself. They are flooding their own zone. I don't know that Trump sees his own fork in the road coming. He may believe he's a power he is claiming. That would be a mistake on his part. It would be a self-deception that could doom his presidency. But the real threat is if he convinces the rest of us to believe he has power he does not have. The first 2 weeks of his presidency have not shown his strength. He is trying to overwhelm you. He is trying to keep you off balance. He is trying to convince you of something that isn't true. Don't believe him.
Also, keep in mind when I say that, I'm like 20% joking, because I haven't been to like the worst parts of like the Bronx or Queens. Like most of my time is spent in the city or in Brooklyn. So maybe there are like really bad parts of New York City that are kind of fucked. I don't know. Why not use taxes to help them instead of red states? Weird take, but Trump opened the discussion for homeless people. The problem is it's not just a matter of throwing money. You need like whole systems to help homeless people. And I don't think we have the political will for it right now or the manpower to do it. I think homelessness in the United States, I think is one of the, probably I would say is one of the most disgraceful things in this country. Now I'm probably overrepresenting just my personal run-ins with homeless people, but it's like, it is overwhelmingly I say overwhelmingly, but the stats disagree with what I'm saying. So it could just be that I'm just encountering certain people, but it feels to me is overwhelmingly people with extreme mental illness, like psychotic people, like people that were too crazy for my stream back in 2021. Okay. Like these people have they just have to be sheltered full time and taken care of. It's really, 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 really fucked. And they also need help. That costs money. Yeah, but it's not just money. It's like money and manpower. You need money and people. And like systems. Like you need a whole ass thing.